Hi everyone, welcome to Elvis Presley, past, present and future, where we're continuing on with our Elvis journey. In our last episode, we left where the Presleys had moved to Memphis, so let's continue and find out what they got up to next. Before they actually left for Memphis, Eloise Bedford was probably the first girlfriend Elvis ever had. The relationship ended when Elvis delivered to Eloise a note when she was about to board the school bus. It simply said, "I have found another girl." Elvis was 11. The other girl was actually Magdalene Morgan. Magdalene was born on April 19, 1934. She was 9 months older than Elvis. She was interviewed in 1990 and she said, "I guess my infatuation with Elvis started in that little church Assembly of God up there in East Tupelo." Madeline had said that she was known as Maggie in school because people, including Elvis, never managed to learn how to spell her name correctly. He sang and picked the guitar. I sang and played the piano. They attended school together at Lahon. She said he never had to go to the principal. He was a good boy. He never had to stand in the corner. It was just always him and his guitar. He brought it to school and he played it at lunchtime. He would go and sit under a tree and pick and sing, not only to me, but to anyone who happened to be listening. Elvis and Magdalene would take strolls through the woods in the hills behind the house. There, they would talk and dream aloud. Even Elvis had the courage to kiss his girlfriend. She said we were just like any other children. She said we used to talk about school, church, singing. He always wanted to be a singer, always. At the time, there was nothing but woods behind the house. One day he took a knife and he carved a heart on a tree trunk. And in it he put my initials and his initials. And then he carved "Love Forever." Elvis was so fond of Magdalene that he used the marriage license of his mother and father and wrote both his name and Magdalene's name on the certificate, although he misspelled Magdalene. He then said to her, "And now we are married." On the 6th of November 1948, the Presleys loaded their belongings into their 1939 green Plymouth and headed to Tupelo. They headed via Highway 78 to Memphis, hoping for a better future. Maybe Memphis was the promised land of opportunity. After lunch, Vernon set out to find his family a place to live, but their high hopes were rudely snatched away by the harsh financial realities. The neighbourhoods which most appealed to them was way beyond their means and out of reach. The Presleys continued their search, and with each passing hour the weary family moved on to increasingly dingier neighbourhoods, until they finally found an apartment. The newly arrived Presleys rented a room in a boarding house located at 370 Washington Street with a rent of $11 per week. Now, as you can see there, it's not there anymore. All that's left is an empty lot with overgrown weeds and a chain link fence. I think it's such a shame that they demolished these houses, especially that were associated with Elvis. It would have made the Elvis history so much more interesting, and just demolishing them I think's wrong. But hey, that's my opinion. Elvis spent the next days in a daze, hoping the empty feeling would stop hurting. Nothing put him at ease. While it was true the new apartment was nicer than the shacks they lived in before, it just didn't feel like home for him. He had always been able to escape the outdoors and feel free in the open flat land, or he could clear his head with the sweet heavy smell of summer night. Now, instead of a front yard, there was a concrete sidewalk and a busy street clouded by exhaust fumes and the acrid discharge of nearby factories. No more lying on the grass, watching the sunset over a lazy farmland. They were surrounded by the ugliness of city industry. The little apartment was dark and depressing, with small dirty windows that barely opened wide enough to let in the fresh air. There was a communal bathroom on their floor that they would share with several families. Elvis wasn't happy about the new home, saying repeatedly to Gladys, "I don't want to live here, let's go home. I don't like it here, Mama. I don't want to be here. I want to go home." He constantly begged his mother. Later that month, Elvis started attending the Christine School on 264 3rd Street. Gladys and Vernon's determination to see Elvis educated was for them a shared passion, and it had set them apart from most of the other sharecroppers who thought their kids only needed to know the basics of reading, writing and arithmetic before going to work in the fields full time. Vernon sat with Elvis through the whole registration process and then left when classes were about to start. Vernon later recalled that shortly after that Elvis walking to school on his first day, the boy reappeared at home, so nervous he was bug-eyed. Soon after, the Presleys moved into their next home, a small one-room apartment located at 572 Poplar Avenue. The small apartment in a large multi-storied building came with a monthly rent of $135, which was within Vernon's budget. A reason for renting it was that it was on the ground floor and it was conveniently located only a brisk walk from Beale Street, and it was close to the growing downtown business section. Once a luxurious house, it was in a sad state of disrepair. The Presleys had to share a bathroom with other tenants. It was a depressing home in a neighbourhood that reeked of white poverty. The 16-unit building had previously been a large single house. Times were hard, and sharing a bathroom and kitchen with 15 other families was difficult for the family. The lack of privacy was bad enough, but it was the filth that was most unbearable. Cockroaches were so plentiful they boldly climbed the walls, even in daylight. Plaster was knocked loose in places, exposing gaping holes. Elvis never forgot the toilets, the stench from the kitchen facilities, or the degrading appearance of the makeshift rooms. Gladys began working as a seamstress for Fashion Curtains at 284 Monroe Avenue. While this improved the family's finances, the work was hard and stressful for Gladys, physically and emotionally. So she got a job working at a cafeteria called Britling's, which was located at 75 Union Avenue. To alleviate the pressure surrounding the sudden move to Memphis, the Presleys joined the First Assembly of God Church, located at 1084 McLemore Street, at the South Main section. There they found people much like themselves, a group of recently displaced rural southern migrants attempting to cope with the rigours of a big city life. Elvis attended Sunday school, as did Cecil Blackwood, the younger brother of R.W. Blackwood of the Blackwood Brothers Gospel Group. Elvis's later girlfriend, Dixie Locke, also attended services there and worked as a secretary. Humes High School was a high school located in Memphis. It was opened in the 1930s, and through to 1967 it was a high school, and it's most remembered as Elvis Presley's high school. Now Humes Middle School, the building is at 659 North Manassas Avenue and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places due to its connection to Elvis. The first year at Humes, he is present 165 days and is absent 15 days. He was never tardy. He receives an A in language, a B in spelling, history and physics, and a C in arithmetic, music and science. Elvis attended Humes High School until he graduated in June 3, 1953. Many students and teachers remember Elvis strolling through the halls of Humes, lugging his guitar. On the 8th of January 1949, Elvis got a special birthday gift from his dad. It was a paperback book of cartoons by George Price. Vernon had wrote the inscription, "May your birthday be sprinkled through and through with joy and good times too. Love, Daddy." Elvis brought this little book to Germany with him when he joined the army in 1958. But it was left behind when he left Germany. A month later, in February 1949, Vernon found a full-time job. He started working at the United Paint Company. It was back-breaking work, loading and unloading cases of paint, but Vernon was determined to keep the job to prove he could support his family. Shortly thereafter, he applied for public housing assistance. The Presleys lived at Poplar Avenue until 20th of September 1949. On the 20th of September, the Presleys moved to Lauderdale Courts, a public housing project. Their apartment number 328 was located at 185 Winchester Street. The edition of the Memphis Housing Appeal, the Housing Authority newspaper, lists the Presleys as one of the 17 new tenants who have recently moved into Lauderdale Courts. Soon after the move, Vernon's mother, Minnie May, who was divorced from Jesse at this time, came to live with Elvis and his parents. This caused overcrowding in the apartment and leaving Vernon and Gladys no privacy at all, and creating tension within the family. In the courts, Gladys Presley was more popular than Vernon. Everyone spoke of her warmth and liveliness, but the Presleys still kept mostly to themselves. At this time, Gladys worked as a nurse's aide at St. Joseph's Hospital at 220 Overton Avenue. Now, we all know this photo, don't we? And you can see the steps behind Elvis there. And that actual place where he's standing is actually now marked. You can go and visit the courts and stand in that exact same spot. Actually, I think it's in the photo. Yes, it is. Right down the bottom there of the photo. The walkway, right at the very bottom, you can see a black mark on the path there. Just right down the bottom of the photo. It is actually a blue mark, and that's actually the spot where Elvis was standing. So you can go and stand on that spot and get your photo taken just like that, and you can stand in Elvis's footsteps. Pretty cool. It was now a happy family. The building was much cleaner than the other one they had on Poplar Street, but also bigger. It had a living room, Gladys and Vernon had their bedroom, Elvis had his own bedroom. As you can see there in that picture, notice all the lipstick marks behind the head of the bed on the wall there. You're actually encouraged to do that. You can actually go and stay in Lauderdale courts, stay in the actual apartment, sleep in Elvis's bed, and you are encouraged to kiss the wall. So that's pretty interesting. To Gladys's delight, she also had her own kitchen, and they also had a private bathroom. The rent was $35 a month, and low enough that Vernon could easily rent it. The telephone company installed a desk phone in the front room. The phone number was 374185. Elvis quickly memorized their phone number and urged everyone he knew to call him. Get a pen and paper, everybody. That's his number. This apartment can now be rented out for $200 a night. So guys, if you're ever in Tupelo, ever go and visit, you can rent out his apartment, stay there for the night for $200 a night, and sleep in Elvis's bed. Starting his sophomore year, Elvis works in the school library. In 1951, he receives his first driver's license. He also joins the ROTC. At Humes High, he tries out for the football team, but he's cut by the coach when he won't trim his sideburns and ducktail. He also got his first Social Security card, and he also held a summer job at Precision Tool Company. In his spare time, he hangs around the black section of town, especially on Beale Street. Quietly, without going out of his way to call attention to himself, Elvis starts to make new friends. He befriended Evan Buzzy Forbes and soon met Buzzy's friends Paul Doer, Farley Guy and Jim Denson. Johnny and Dorsey Burnett too lived there, and also Johnny Black. His older brother Bill later became Elvis's bass player. Elvis and his friends roamed around Memphis exploring the many sights and sounds. He also held parties at his family apartment, where he often played his guitar and sang, although he was so shy that he usually would only do so when the lights were out. Often he amazed his friends by knowing all the words to every song. Sometimes he played the guitar with a group of older boys under the leafy trees of Marketmore. He remains in the background for most part, singing gospel numbers and popular ballads. Sometimes he slipped into the ghetto to listen to the black music. Gladys supported Elvis in his musical endeavours. At one point, she asked Jim Denson's mother if Jim's older brother, Jesse, could teach Elvis how to play the guitar. Jesse somewhat reluctantly agreed. Every Sunday, Elvis showed up for his lessons. Often they went down to the basement below the courts to play, so they wouldn't disturb others. The summer after his freshman year, Vernon bought Elvis a push lawnmower, which Elvis used for making money. He and his friends mowed for $4 an hour the lawns in the neighbourhood. But he and his friends also sold fruit discarded by supermarkets in order to earn money. He loved to work, but he also did the things other teenagers do as well, which included playing football, going to movies, eating hamburgers, drinking milkshakes, and meeting girls. When Elvis was 14, he met a girl he liked, and she took a like to him as well. Her name? Betty Ann McMahon. Her father owned a company of blinds and curtains. Gladys had worked for McMahon. Betty's mum was at the time in charge of a beauty counter at Dowie Robbins Pharmacy in the Hotel Gia. Gladys had encouraged Elvis and Betty to be friends. Betty and his friends would come outside during the night and sit on a blanket on the grass. Elvis would be so quiet that you could hardly get a word out of him. But Betty became his first real girlfriend in Memphis, and they went together for 5 years. He appreciated the fact that she was a good basketball player. They would go to the Suzor Theatre on North Main Street. They were good friends, and having a girlfriend made him aware of his hair. This is when Elvis first took a real interest in the shaping of his hair and found a style that he liked. Betty tried to teach him how to dance, but he couldn't learn because of his 2 left feet and lack of coordination. All Elvis could do was laugh. Once Elvis had tried to kiss her, and she pushed him almost off the 3rd level of the Lauderdale court. This is what caused the end of their relationship. Buzzy Forbes recalls many times we would invite Elvis and some of our friends to go to Oldfellow Hall and shoot pool with us. We'd spend a lot of time there, also planning our lives, going for entertainment, dances. The Rainbow Girls also had meetings there, and we did a lot of things together. The Oddfellows and Rainbow Girls, we never did need any money for entertainment there. Elvis learned a great deal about the performers and the music there. He was initially hired to clear tables at the hall, but always managed to stay for the first musical set. It was at the Oddfellow Hall that Elvis first saw his future bass player, Bill Black, perform. Although Elvis played for his friends in the courts, he didn't reveal his musical interests to very many people at Humes High School until the 11th grade, when he once again began toting his guitar to school. During his first 2 years at Humes as a student, he went rather unnoticed. Quickly, Elvis discovered Suizar's Theatre, the one he used to go to when he used to go out walking with Betty. It was near the courts, and on a Saturday afternoon, Elvis would go to the bargain matinees. Elvis was a long-time lover of movies. He became a regular, and he tried to emulate Tony Curtis, which was one of the screen stars. Elvis actively went about getting himself a permanent and eyeliner to imitate Curtis. In November 1950, Elvis was hired as a part-time usher at Lowe's Theatre. He works 35 hours a week for almost a year, despite school, using his earnings to help his family. He was fired from Lowe's after getting in a fight with another boy, but soon started working at the Malco Theatre. Mickey Graham Creamer said, "My dad was the manager of Lowe's State from 1949 till the mid-60s. As many may know, my dad did fire Elvis when he was an usher because of a scuffle with another usher in the early 50s. But eventually, my dad hired him back." What was truly amazing is that this kid was an usher, and then about 5 years later, he calls Dad and tells Dad he's coming back to see himself up on the big screen. That was quite a night. My dad held a private screening for Elvis, his parents, and a friend visiting from Hollywood, Nick Adams, and of course our family was there in full force. Now, see that picture, guys, right where the doors are? On street level there, right above the doors. It says, "Wednesday, Elvis Presley, Love Me Tender." So his film was being showed at the theatre, and he rang his old boss and said, "I'm coming to watch it." Elvis particularly enjoyed the choir at the Centenary African Methodist Church at 878 Mississippi Boulevard. There, he and his cousin Gene Smith sat in on Sunday morning services. They were the only two faces in the all-black congregation. Yet they were always welcomed. Out of courtesy, Elvis and his cousin sat in the balcony, as the blacks were required to do when they visited white churches. Gene Smith said Elvis would be swept up by the singing, and although he couldn't sing alone with the choir down on the ground, of course we had to be respectful and keep quiet. But he would continuously go there on a Sunday, mouth the words as if he was singing along right there with them. Elvis would love going there and partake of the spiritual power of that particular gospel group. In small clubs like the Silver Slipper, the Green Beetle, the Silver Stallion, the 1600 Club, the Green Owl, the Green Beetle, the Palms, the Hi-Hat, the Cotton Club, Elvis learned his craft. And you can see the Hi-Hat Club there just in the front there, underneath the Dr. Pepper sign. It says Hi-Hat. These little out-of-the-way clubs provided the training ground for the Memphis musicians. For most southern whites, the black culture was witnessed from afar, still separate by law and custom, no matter how close they lived to one another. But Elvis's love of black music played at places such as the Green Owl and the Hi-Hat helped him to see past those barriers. As Vernon once said, Elvis was more colour-blind than most. Blues legend B.B. King also mentions in his autobiography meeting the young Elvis on several occasions and comments on Elvis's obvious fascination with blues music. Elvis had begun frequenting the rough hillbilly bars on Highway 78. During the spring and summer of 1952, Elvis had discovered for the first time the Eagle's Nest nightclub, located at 4090 Lamar Avenue. A larger popular country music bar was undergoing a musical transition. Many of the future rockabilly rock and roll stars tried out their new songs at that club. Elvis would also visit popular tunes after school not far from his house in nearby Lauderdale. He used to listen to the latest R&B and gospel records. Popular Tunes pioneered the idea of allowing customers to listen to any record in the store before buying. Years later, Popular Tunes was the first store ever to sell an Elvis 45 RPM. Elvis frequently visited the store to monitor his record sales, and as an adult, he continued to shop here for his music here at Popular Tunes. In September 1952, Elvis Presley took a part-time job at Marl Metal Company, located at 208 Georgia Avenue, Memphis, a furniture manufacturer, where he worked after school. At Marl Metal, Elvis had a dead-end janitor position. All he did was sweep up during the evening shift, but the $1 an hour pay was excellent. He worked from 3 in the afternoon to 11 p.m. each day. Though Elvis's schoolwork suffered dramatically when he began to fall asleep in his high school classes, his parents made him quit the job at Marl. He quit after 2 months. At the end of 1952, Elvis performed during an amateur night at the Silver Stallion nightclub, located at 1447 Union Avenue, and the Palms Club on Summer Avenue. The appearance at the Palm Club had been set up by sleepy-eyed John James Dickinson, a Memphis music entrepreneur. He remembers Elvis singing at parties in the basement. He also remembered him in 1956. WHBO Radio had its broadcasting studio on the second floor. The Presleys had been notified in November 1952 by the Memphis Housing Authority that the income was high enough. They earned $4,133 a year, that they no longer qualified for public housing. Vernon received an eviction notice on 17th of November 1952, stating they had to be out by February 1953. On the 7th of January 1953, one day before Elvis's 18th birthday, the family moved into a small house at 698 Saffrons Avenue, incorrectly reported as 398 Cypress Street. It was a small apartment house in which they secured 2 downstairs rooms. The rent was $52 a month. It is easy to understand why the living situation at Saffrons depressed Elvis. Saffrons Avenue was a step from Lauderdale Courts in public housing because the rent was higher, but the apartment was disastrous. It was a small unit desperately in need of paint, new plumbing, and adequate lighting. But there was another reason too, for Elvis's unhappiness with the new surroundings. Each morning he arose and complained about the putrid sanitary conditions. The bathroom was down the hall, and Elvis found it cold and dirty. The water was never hot. The bathtub was always filled with hair. His experience at this apartment created an aversion to bathing with Elvis, and he showered when it was absolutely necessary. In spite of their higher income, they were unable to rent a suitable apartment without a federal subsidy. The rent was $10 more than the apartment at Winchester Street, and much smaller. Saffrons Avenue runs north-south adjacent to Humes High School. The Presley home was directly across the street from the school. Now, why is Saffrons the true address and not Cypress? Because the address is listed on Elvis's draft card. While living in this apartment, he turned 18 and registered for the draft. The Presleys lived in Saffrons from the 7th of January until April 1953. Within 4 months of moving to Saffron's, the Presleys would move back to the Lauderdale neighbourhood. In April 53, they moved into an apartment located at 462 Alabama Avenue. It was a 2-story Victorian brick building with a sweeping front porch. There were just 2 apartments in the house. The rent was $50 a month, $15 more than Lauderdale. Vernon and Gladys occupied the only bedroom. Minnie May slept on a cot in the dining room, and Elvis took the couch each night. Their upstairs neighbours, Rabbi Alfred Futcher and his wife Jeanette, showed a considerable amount of kindness and financial consideration towards their new tenants. Jeanette Futcher said they never had much. There wasn't even a decent chair to sit down on. About all they had was this cheap little radio. On Saturday afternoons, Elvis and Vernon would polish Elvis's 10-year-old Lincoln. That's Elvis standing against his Lincoln. Other people recalled seeing Elvis walk down the street with his guitar, his hair spilling over the collar of his pink shirt. Anna Mae Bradley, who lived a block away on High Street, recalls, "Once I was sitting on my front porch when Elvis stopped to visit with his guitar. He sat down next to me on the porch and began to play. It seems 100 years ago now." As early as March 1953, Elvis began spending more and more time hanging out in the Beale Street clubs. In May, he performed at the Silver Stallion nightclub, located at 1447 Union Avenue. The blues that Elvis heard at these bars was transformed into a new sound. In honky-tonk bars, like the Silver Stallion, it was possible for the young Elvis to perform blue-tinged blues with rockabilly fare. The Silver Stallion paid off the top-beat cop to let underage people like Elvis into the bar. They held amateur shows each week. These nights were the ones that Elvis loved because they provided some of his strangest moments as a rookie performer. Marcus Van Story, one of the young musicians from Lauderdale Courts, recalls playing with Elvis at the Goodwin Institute, located at 172 Madison Avenue, where amateurs were encouraged to perform. He said Elvis would wander in and we would do mostly country songs. He had a real way with the crowd. In 1953, during the summer, as Elvis sat in the back of the Flamingo Hotel, a Beale Street nightclub, a young black piano player, Billy the Kid Emerson, approached him, and they spent some time talking about the local music scene. During Elvis's visit at the Flamingo, Emerson played a number of Big Joe Turner songs. Afterward, as they talked, Emerson told Elvis a story of a song he had written while listening to Turner. The tune was titled, "When It Rains, It Really Pours," and that this song had a powerful impact on Elvis. That song, Emerson remarked, was really a monster seller, and I asked Elvis to cut it, and later on Elvis did. In the summer of 1953, again, Elvis stopped with some friends by Meteor Recording Studios, located on 1794 Chelsea Avenue, for a private recording. MRS was owned and operated by the brothers Lester and Jules Bilhari. During Elvis' short visit, Jules Bilhari referred Elvis and his friends to Sam Phillips' Memphis recording service on 706 Union Avenue to make his private record. Returning to the employment office in August 1953, he indicated he wanted a job in which he could keep clean. He was sent to several places for interviews, including a Sears and Roebuck store and a Kroger grocery store. He was not hired from any of these interviews. During these interviews on his employment card, it was written, "Do not be upset with his appearance. He really is a good boy." You can also see there on the right hand side the very last line. If you can read it there, it says that he gets on really, really well with people. The top row of that second paragraph says, flashily dressed, playboy type. So this was his employment card when he went to look for jobs. And his employment supervisor, Miss Harris. And that's what she had to say about that. Excuse me. Elvis graduated from Humes on June 3, 1953. During his senior year, Elvis began to focus on his appearance. He let his hair and sideburns grow longer and dressed in wild, flashy clothes that made him stand out, especially in the conservative, formist deep south of the 1950s. He would wear dress pants to school every day. Everyone else wore jeans. But he wore dress pants, and he would wear a coat and fashion scarf like an ascot tie, as if he were a movie star. Of course, he got a lot of flack for this because he stood out like a sore thumb. People thought, that's really weird. It was like he was already portraying something that he wanted to be. Elvis was different. Most boys had crew cuts and wore t-shirts and blue jeans. Elvis would appear at school in pink jackets and yellow pants and a ducktail haircut. He was quiet, very courteous, and largely stayed to himself. And that's Elvis right there up the back, the very back row on the left, with the black jacket on. And that is actually Elvis's senior biology class. Miss Schilling's biology class. One of his classmates recalls at the Hume Talent Show in April 1953 that I realised Elvis could really sing. There were no swivel hips. His props were a chair, a guitar, and a loud costume. He put one foot on the chair, strummed the guitar, and sang his heart out. To me, that was when rock and roll was born. The ovation was thunderous and long. Another classmate said, whenever Elvis Presley walked by my best friend and I, we would both look at each other and laugh and giggle. We both had a crush on him. When one day he walked by and walked up to my girlfriend and asked why we laughed when we walked by, she was so dumbfounded that she blurted out, "It's because we think you are so good looking." I guess he was surprised also. He just broke into a grin and walked away. On September 21, 1953, Elvis returned to Precision Tool Company, operating a drill press for $1.55 an hour. He continued to work there until March 19, 1954. Elvis would frequent not only clubs, but also different shops in Beale Street. Lansky Brothers, that's where he bought his clothes, located at 126 Beale Street. His hair oil brand, Triple Active Success Hair Oil, he bought at A. Schwab's dry goods store. He got his hair cut at Jim's barbershop, located at 201 Main Street, Albertgale, who had been cutting his hair before he became famous, remembers those days well. He said girls used to come in and collect Elvis's hair off the hair cloths and from the floor. It was really unbelievable. To end our video, before we move on to the next video, there's another couple of pictures I want to show you. This girl was on Beale Street in 1953. It's walking around Beale Street, and the last picture, Elvis gets a speeding ticket. You can see it's the same time, he's wearing the same shirt, same day, he got a speeding ticket. And it's just like he knew that the camera was watching him, because Elvis was just looking straight at the camera. But so that's it for our video today. Our next video will be when Elvis gets his big break in recording his first hit, and Elvis Presley taking off. So join us next time when we continue on our Elvis journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.